Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll get started. If I could have your attention. I would like to welcome everybody for coming out on such short notice. Missoula Resists is the organization that organized this, and we are really happy to see everybody here. It was very short notice because of the way the House bill has been running through very quickly, so I do appreciate your being here. Missoula Resists is an organization that's community-led in Missoula. It has as its goals to inform, to promote reasoned discussion, and to take action on issues that affect our community, state, and our nation. You can find out more about us at MissoulaResists.org, and you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Big Sky. I'd like to take this opportunity to promote the next sponsored event that we're going to do, which will be on July 17th. It's going to be a community day of service, and we're going to provide opportunities for the people in Missoula to volunteer for the organizations that make us so unique and so strong within Missoula. So you can follow our social media for updates on that event and how to get involved. The project today came together very quickly because of House Bill 1, or as some people call it, the Big Beautiful Bill, and other people have other names for it, which was supposed to have been voted in yesterday. It's now been postponed to July 4th. And as a result of that time frame, there are some voices that are missing from the table today in our discussion. Most notably, the voices of our Native communities, and for this we apologize. We gratefully acknowledge the Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather and about whose ancestral lands we will talk tonight. We acknowledge the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. We're also missing Republican voices. Senator Daines and Representative Zinke's offices were contacted multiple times with requests to send a representative. Senator Daines' office responded that they didn't have someone who could come and referred us to the Pachyderm Club. The Pachyderm Club did not respond at all. Senator Zinke's office never did respond. We also thought it would be important to have the voices of a community that was highly impacted by public lands. So we sent an invitation to one of the county commissioners in Sanders County, and we never received a reply for that either. So we are missing people today. I would like to give a shout out to Destination Missoula and to their Green Dot program, which stands in support of those who work on public lands. They have donated some yard signs, and so please help yourself and take them home to show your support for the peoples who work on our public lands. They are going through a lot of confusion and chaos right now and need our support. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Jim Sayer, and to our respected panelists. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks very much for coming. 5:15 on a Friday afternoon in the summer in Montana. You people are heroes. And I also want to thank all our panelists, especially Ryan, who came all the way with some of his family members from Kalispell. Shot down is going to go back tonight, so thank you, Ryan. But I have Ryan Busse. I got Monica Tranel. All these people need no introduction, but what the heck? And Land Twaney over here. I want to start, first of all, Jim Sayer. Pam just wrote me into this. I really don't belong up here, except I love public lands like you do. And I'm a member of the board of Montana Environmental Information Center, MEIC, another major champion for our environment. But I am proud to be up here with all these folks. I've canvassed for them, especially Monica and Ryan, and I know how hard they work. And another champion that I just wanted to have a moment of remembrance for is Pat Williams, who passed this week. And about a month ago, rode with a bunch of friends on my bike, took a trailer, took our camp stuff up to Poe Meadow in Rattlesnake. And of course, pretty much anytime you go up in the Rattlesnake, you think about Pat and what he did to preserve that amazing recreation area and wilderness area. So just for 10 seconds, let's just do a moment and just think about Pat. Thank you. And I know they've got memorial gatherings planned for Pat too sometime soon, so look for that. Do any of you want to say something about Pat right now before we go into the public lands program? You can weave it in. You guys are all masters. Okay, good? All right. Well, again, thank you for coming out. What we're going to do is talk public lands a little bit generally and then get down into some of the details. We'll talk about the big bad bill because there were so many provisions. I mean, a lot of the focus is on the sell-off of public lands, but there are about 20 or 30 provisions in there that were crap, and that were things that we should be looking at. But I want to start, if you don't mind, because I haven't seen you guys, and you do look more rested, I think. Okay, sorry, eat the mic. But I wanted to ask you, I remember back in November, start of November, and you were working your tails off, you two, but all of us, trying to get good people elected who care about public lands. And here we are 5 months since Inauguration Day in Washington, D.C., and I'm just wondering, what's going through your mind now? When you think back to your campaign, going across Montana, talking to folks here, and seeing where we are, 6, 7, 8 months later. Just more general, and also kind of what's the political context for, public lands? I know it's a big question, but who wants to start?
I'll start.
Okay, thanks, Ron.
I know this is not a big "I told you so" night, but as far as being here with the attacks on public lands, I think those of us who ran to protect public lands, and somebody like me, who it's really my political origin story, is public lands. I'm kind of sorry to report, I told you so. What we're facing now is really, in a lot of ways, a dire, in some ways, a worst case scenario from a policy and politics standpoint. I'm sure Land will talk about this. Land has been, he flew in from DC and he didn't even take off his jacket. He slept in it last night and showed up here with his jacket. So he's been right in the middle of this. So there's really, really some incredibly dire public lands issues that are facing Montana, the nation, and it's not just sale. As was mentioned here, the policies, regulatory, and staffing and funding issues that are facing public lands are every bit as dire as the sale issue. It's really pretty rough. The one point of light I'll give you is, and Land may speak to this too, but the sale, the sort of emergency, all hands on deck nature of this sale proposal has energized a group of people across the country that, frankly, Land and I worked together for many, many years, and I don't know that we ever saw the sort of bipartisan energy and pushback against Republican policies that we've seen in the last 10 days. Of course, everybody tends to get motivated when their house is about ready to burn down, so that's kind of what's happened, but if there's one bright light, that's it.
You guys can have a mic and they're all live.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Pam, for organizing this. I'll just give you a 30-second where I am now. So after the election, I got in it to win, not to come close. And one of the things that happened to me after the election, a woman came up to me in the grocery store and started crying. That happened quite a bit. People would come up to me and start crying. So then I was like, I'm not going out in public anymore. But this woman said, I'm from Beaverhead County. And if you and John Tester can't get elected, I don't know what Montana's come to. And she started crying, and she said, and I'm not a Democrat. And we started talking. We had this great conversation, and I said, I don't really know what's next. And she said, I feel like the thing that brings us most together as Montanans, whatever your story, however long you've been here, our landscape connects us. And maybe that's all we have right now. Maybe that's the place where we have to start. And I've carried that with me. And so a couple of things that I've done in the last 6 months, I filed a lawsuit challenging the tariffs and my plaintiffs are Blackfoot tribal members. Susan Weber is the lead plaintiff, and yeah, yay Susan. But the argument is that under the Commerce Clause, the Blackfoot tribe as a cross-border nation is not subject to the tariffs from the executive branch. It's at the Ninth Circuit right now. There is a split among the circuits. It will go to the Supreme Court. And so, I had these lawyers from DC call me. Charles Koch's lawyers called me and said, well, can we have a copy of your brief? And I said, fuck you. You're the reason we got here. And they said, well, we're on the same side now. And I said, no, you own this. You own this. And so I think really what we're going to talk about tonight is public lands. But for me, this is personal. My older brother is Career Park Service. He's in Yellowstone. My sister-in-law lost her job. And I had a lot of people call me who made $16 an hour working on our public lands who got fired. And I said, I'll help you. And I filed lawsuits for some of them. And they said, I didn't vote for you. And I said, I'm with you now. And they said, I will never vote for a Republican again. But, we how many times did we hear that story on the trail? Forever, right? And, I don't believe that anymore, but I really think that what we have to acknowledge is the people who work on these public lands have really, really been hurt intentionally, right? Because public lands are great, but if they're not being managed or run or operated, we got nothing. And so I think that's really, I'd like to have that be a part of the conversation that we have tonight too, are the people who work on the public lands. So just a little bit about where I've been.
Thanks, Monica. Lan?
All right. Thank you again for everybody coming here tonight. Thank you for Resist for putting this together. As Ryan said, this is our opportunity right now to do something for the American people. You're doing that by showing up today. I know you've been showing up in other ways. But what's at stake here is our heritage. And it's woven here in Montana in particular throughout our lives. And whether you hunt, whether you fish, whether you pick huckleberries, pick morel mushrooms, you ski, you mountain bike, you harvest timber, you run cows on our public land, it's part of who we are. And so I think that's let's keep that in mind, I think, as we go forward. And I think that, as Ryan described, what you've seen, not just in the last 10 days, but really it's been a crescendo up till now. But you have this issue of the sale of public lands to pay off tax breaks for billionaires. That's where it is right now. This is not for affordable housing, which is it's being guised in. But they're doing it to pay off tax breaks for millionaires. And by the way, what they're going to sell is not going to even come close to paying that off. It's just an excuse to be able to do it. And so it's an excuse to be able to do it because they've been talking about it for a long time. Senator Mike Lee from Utah, who is behind this, he deserves that every single time. He's the #1 enemy to public lands right now in the country. Has been for the last 15 years. But it's just now he feels like he can actually push this forward, and he's been emboldened to do it. It was written about in Project 25, no surprise. And so now what they're doing, in simple terms, is they're dismantling, Monica talked about that a little bit, with all the doging of our frontline conservation public land servants. It's going to have huge repercussions this summer, and already is having repercussions. But that's the dismantling. Then there's the defunding that Ryan talks about. If you looked at the presidential budget, you're looking at agencies that have traditionally been underfunded and understaffed, and now you're going to take more money away from them after you just fired a bunch of people? They're doing that on purpose. And then the last piece of that is divest. They want these lands for themselves because there is so much untapped wealth there. Now, I would say that I see that untapped wealth, but right now that belongs to all of us. And it doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter who you voted for in the last election, right? It doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent, they belong to us. You all recreate out there on these lands. Doesn't matter like what color your skin is. Doesn't matter how much money's in your bank account. They belong to us all. It's like that's what's at stake. And then I think about like the $1.2 trillion that is the outdoor economy nationwide around the outdoor economy. That's sustainable. Clean air and clean water. We did a damn good job getting our water back in this city, but 70% of our clean water starts on public lands. Do you want somebody else owning that? I would say, hell, no. And then I think about other things that like you can't even like put a price tag on. But it's like, I see my son in the back, and we got to go on the Smith River 2 years ago, and all you know that's kind of state land, BLM land, a lot of private land. It's just patchwork that's been put together. But we went in April and got our asses kicked. It snowed 3 days. We were the only people on the river, the only people. Nobody launched 2 days after we did, and there's only one other person that launched before us, and we never saw him. And he's 14 now, but he was 12 then, or 13. And like, he had to help me put up camp and take down camp. We became a team. I watched him become a man on that trip. I'm not going to say that all, when we got home, that we were still a team, and he was like, I'm ready to mow the lawn now every time, you know, when I see it needs to be mowed. But I'm telling you, these public lands give us more than just like the money, the places that we recreate. It gives us opportunities to grow as people too, and find our solace. So that's what's at stake. I'm happy to talk more when these questions come out about exactly what's going on right now, and who's behind it.
Thanks, Lan. Hey, also, you guys did a terrible job of self-introducing. So right now, you were at Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, and tell us now where you are, you know, in terms of your work life, your activism life.
Yep. So a lot of you probably know my parents, Phil and Robin Twaney. I came from that and out of the womb was involved in conservation. Been working in conservation now for 25 years. CEO for Backcountry Hunters and Anglers for 10 years, had a great time there. Ryan was the chair for a long time there, and we did some really good work, I think, together. One of the restrictions of C3s, though, is that, one, you legally can't do some things. You're prohibited from getting involved in elections, and you're prohibited from getting involved, you can't lobby more than 20% of your overall budget. And so, you know, I think the good parts about C3s is the memberships and the stuff that they do on the ground, the activism that way, the advocacy that you can do, but you can't get involved in elections and you can't lobby as much as you need to right now, especially. And so a friend of mine that we've done some political stuff here in Montana, helped out with Tester's campaign 3 times. And again, unfortunately, he lost. All of you, I mean, it's ridiculous. But a friend and I are working on a thing called American Hunters and Anglers. And so we're based here in Montana. But our biggest thing is we want to break eggs so others can make omelets. And so we don't care. We don't have a membership. We don't have corporate partners. We can go out and say the things that need to be said about public lands right now. And so that you frame that, and so you don't start way over here, you start more in that middle. And right now we're way over here having that conversation. And so our job is to do that on social media, which makes me embarrassed sometimes. That's where half the people are taking their news. And it's embarrassing, but you got to get involved in that sphere where you're going to get taken over, and that's kind of what's happened, I would say. But I'll stop there.
Yes. Okay. And Monica, you're working primarily on a number of legal cases.
I think.
Yeah.
I started a Substack. You can find it on Montana Connections if you want to read that. So talked a little bit about public lands this week, and you know, just really some of the things that we're facing. I felt like what I learned was you cannot deprogram people fast enough to pick up on what Land was just saying. When a candidate, you can't deprogram people in one race in 2 cycles. You can't shake enough hands. So where people get their information, what they know, how they know it, we have to figure out how to get information to people. And I felt like part of the way I could do that is to write a Substack where I'm just putting information out to say things like, in Phillips County, you have this much public land, you get this much money from the federal government, and here's how you voted. And just think about that. So that's what I'm trying to do right now, is get information out.
Thank you.
So I'm doing both of those things. I've got a Substack too, Montana Dispatch. I also co-founded a C4 national PAC. Some of you may have got phone messages or text from us. It's called Public Land Warriors. And Land and I come from a similar place because we fought a similar battle, and we're in the same battle now. and have been good friends for a long time. I personally believe that one of the disastrous byproducts of Trumpism, it has stripped all the nuance from our politics. You know, this used to be a country where you went and talked to your senators or your representatives and you gently nudged them on policy from a 49 to a 51 or a 47 to a 53. Or, you know, we worked in the middle, and people always said, hey, the parties are about the same, and we had polite 501c3s, and that's kind of how the country ran right up until 2016. And then it's just like we just stripped everything off the walls and it's down to the studs. And I now believe that there virtually is there is no nicety in politics anymore. It's all a political calculation. People who are in office make a calculation based upon whether the thing they're going to do is going to get them unelected or elected. I believe that 99% of policy happens on a Tuesday in November. I believe if we care about these things, we better start fighting for the Tuesday in November. I also really believe what Monica said, which is the broken nature of democratic politics is a mess. And we think we can rush into an election 3 months before November, dump $100 million into Montana, win a Senate race, and change everybody's mind. That, my friends, is bullshit. That's not going to happen. What we can do is for the 2 and 3 and 4 years prior to these elections, we can start fighting the cultural battle with modern media and a budget that we raise to change people's minds and change the culture. And so that's what my mission is at current, to take a longer runway, fight that battle, and win the Tuesday in November. That's what we're doing.
So Ryan, you said Democratic, is that small d or big D? You're saying that's small d, right?
That is big D Democratic Party politics. I think that
okay.
I think the way the Democratic Party, I think we're behind the curve, and right now, you know, we'll get into this, but this is a partisan issue. 100% of the public lands attacks are coming from the Republican Party. 100% of the Democratic Party is defending public lands. I don't know what else to do with that except for to acknowledge it and live within that political reality and try to get more pro-public lands people elected. So it's a big D Democratic and big R Republican issue.
Got it. Thanks. All right. I want to step back just one more time because, Land, I think you talked about the $1.2 trillion outdoor economy, which is huge, and I've seen all the reports that have come out. Can you bring that down to Montana for a moment and talk about what it means here?
You're gonna
because
ask
it
me
feels
that.
like that gets a little bit of short shrift.
The numbers are on your Substack. Give it to us right now, can you?
Hey, Monica?
Is it 400 million from the parks, from the national parks, the gateway economy, and that doesn't take into account like all the stores, the restaurants. I put all those numbers in the Substack yesterday.
So I think traditionally it's like over $1 billion here in Montana, which is huge. That's equal to agriculture, which is almost exactly that same kind of number. And if I'm off by a couple million, please don't argue with that. But yeah, I mean it's a huge piece of the economy here, and I think that I think about rural Montana in particular, and during hunting season in particular, it's like Christmas for 5 weeks, because all these hunters show up, and they're in there, and they're in the cafes, they're in there, and they're at the grocery stores. They're spending their money and their time in these rural communities. And so these rural communities get a big burst of money during those 5 weeks of the general rifle season, but generally, I would say that starts in September and goes all the way through the end of the year. You think about bird hunting, you think about the early season for big game, and then the actual general season. And so it's absolutely essential, and I think that economy, we talk about the economy all the time in this country, which we should, that is sustainable if we care and feed it, and we can actually grow it, right? And I think there's a great model here in Montana about how we have done that, and I think that other states are starting to realize that, and that's why you're hearing the conversation and the pushback you are right now about the idea of taking away the cornerstone, which is public lands, to that economy.
I think Bryce Ward, the economist from former University of Montana, has a really great presentation. Sarah and I saw it at the Glacier Bank annual meeting. But he'll, throughout his whole presentation, we can boil down this many dollars goes here, and this many dollars, what is it now, $1.2 trillion being sold through the trailhead? I think that's what I heard here. No, it's not trillions, billion, it's billion. No, okay. But the point I'm making here is that all of Western Montana, just about everybody that's here, is in some way related to public lands. Everything you do, the reason you live here, the reason our kids want to come back here, what you want to do on the weekends, the reason people visit here, what we do and buy and think about and harvest. Like, it's all, whether we measure it in a cafe or a credit card receipt at the trailhead, like, the very nature of the reason we're here is our public lands. I think everything's related to it.
And I think it's not just the outdoor recreation economy, it's also PILT money, which is the, payments in lieu of taxes that all these counties get. So Mineral County is 97% public lands, Sanders County, Lincoln County, they're basically funded by that revenue that comes in. And I think I also want to acknowledge, Shelley, Fionn, thank you for being here tonight, but I think the tribes and the tribal nations whose land this was before we all started calling it our public lands, and the way that this all came into being through federal land grants, the universities, the University of Montana, Montana State University, these were all set up because essentially what was happening in the 1860s and post-construction was to create federal public lands across the West. And I think understanding that as part of our story, the way that these came to exist, the fact that people lived here when the federal government created the West, that relationship with the West and the federal government, for me, I mean, actually this tariff lawsuit and working closely with the history of how this all came about, I feel embarrassed at how little I know about Native American history. And I'll be honest about that. I grew up here. I grew up on the Cheyenne Nation, and I feel like I don't know enough about it. But I want to acknowledge that. Shelley, thank you for being here. And that story is a part of our story that we need to tell better and integrate more into every one of these conversations that we have.
I want to ask you one more question about the economy of our outdoors and public lands. And then we're going to go to the attacks, because we'll talk for about 20, 30 minutes about that, and then we're going to open it up with the audience too, because I know a lot of you have questions. But I'm going to date myself. My first job out of grad school was with in the U.S. Senate. I worked for Tim Worth from Colorado in the 80s. Yeah, I know. It's like a long time ago. And geez, that was when Reagan was president. And Gary Hart was senator. And then Tim won his seat. And it was the time of the Atari Democrats and the amenity economy. And that was when you started to see the push, especially in the West, to link our outdoors and the economic boom it could create. So places like Boulder, Colorado, Bozeman, that was what you saw. But I'm still baffled right now at how come we have these attacks on public lands. If you were to attack farming, I mean, farming gets these insane subsidies, right, from the federal government. But if you were attacking farming, they go right to the economic argument. Well, you can't do this. This is a cornerstone. As you said, the value of output from ag is pretty much the same as what we get from, and it's more sustainable in a lot of ways. Why is it that 40 years later, after I was in the Senate, working in the Senate, you guys are talking about the same thing? Why is it that we're in this case where there's not a reflex reaction saying, geez, you can't do this. You're going to kill this billion-dollar economy in Montana?
Money.
Go ahead.
Money.
What? Money?
I mean, look,
but
this is a common theme that's going on in our politics right now. The things that are publicly held and benefit a vast majority of people are being attacked and privatized or sold off for profit, for money. So we think about health care for working people in Medicaid, something that assists the vast majorities of people, right? They want to end that, sell it off, privatize it, make it more difficult, and frankly, anything that is going to benefit, I mean, I'm sorry, but look at Trump's inauguration pictures. Billionaire, 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 billionaire. And so if you wonder why these things are happening, think, well, who does it benefit? Billionaires and corporations. And who takes it in the shorts? Common citizens, right? We own this. And this is, I think it's really important to note that conservatives love this concept of American exceptionalism. We're awesome because we have jets that can drop bombs on Iran. And we are awesome because we have jets that can drop bombs on Iran. But the most exceptional thing in the history of the country is this idea that citizens, us, own 640 million acres, and we trust ourselves to manage it through our federal government and laws that we demand be passed. Like, that is the essence of the democratic, small d, democratic experiment, the essence of it. And that is what they are attacking. That is what they came for first. If you look at these Doge attacks, they doged Park Service employees. They doged U.S. Forest Service. They doged BLM. Like, they went right at the thing that is the most exceptional, commonly held thing about America.
Is anybody following the land swaps and the crazies? I mean, I think that, that's, so, and just I would reframe that a little bit, Jim, and say, I don't think that this, grab for money is new or since the 80s. I mean, this has been going on forever. Our, Joe Dixon, who is Montana's progressive Republican representative and then governor in the early, 1900s, introduced a legislation, the Allotment Act, to sell off land on the tribal nations for money. So, grabbing things for money is not new. And I think what, we all have to really acknowledge is we've all grown up in a time and a place in America where things went pretty good, through the 70s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. Government was doing what government should mostly do. And that's not happening now. But this is not new. And I think having to stand up for and be the people and keep our government, be the guardrails of democracy, that's on us. It's not happening from the Supreme Court. It's not happening from Congress. And the executive branch is trying to take all the power. We are it. We are the guardrails right now. This is not new. And I think we just have to acknowledge it. They only have to win once. They do that land swap and the crazies. They just have to do it one time. We have to win every day. Every damn day.
Land?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I guess I will add is just go follow the money. So Mike Lee, who is actually doing this from Utah, one of his #1 donors is Blackstone, which is like a private equity fund that is a real estate company. The LDS Church is the #4 landowner in the entire United States.
#1 in Florida, #1 in Utah.
So I don't boo that, but they want more, right? Like, they want more. And so, like, it's this greed, I guess, that you either want to privatize it for yourself or you want to go make money off of our public lands without restrictions as a private landowner. And so it's not, as Monica kind of brought up, like, Congressman Chaffetz tried this 7 years ago, 8 years ago now, 2017. Another elected official from Utah, and he got his ass handed to him in a week on social media. He introduced this bill to sell 3 million acres. Social media went nuts. And a week later, he comes out and he's dressed in all camo. He's holding on to a dog that does not hunt. And he said, "I heard the people." But it's another 8 years later, and why? It's because there's so much money to be made. And like Will Rogers said, I think back in the day, he said, buy land because they're not making any more of it. That's that wealth that we're sitting on. This is never going to go away. And that's probably the most frustrating piece about this conversation, is this will happen. I mean, I keep on bringing up Colin because he's the youngest kid in the room. But in 20, 30 years, they're going to be dealing with the same stuff, and it's actually the pressures are going to be higher. And Mike Lee, all he cares is to chip away a little bit at a time. And when you think about a Secretary of Interior right now that is talking about the sale of public lands and their balance sheet, that has not happened in my career for 25 years. This has been emboldened because of just I guess I would say the lack of pushback, and also just because there's still so much money involved. So,
yeah, thanks. Okay, so got some context. Let's go back to the first assault. You were just mentioning it, Ryan, and you did too, Monica, on Doge. And so could you all, do you feel like you could give us a status report, because we had that assault right out of the box, and then they said, oh God, we got to start pulling people back. I mean, they did this across multiple agencies, but in terms of our public lands, our public land management agencies, could you give us a status report on where we're at in terms of that first assault, where our agencies are today?
Well, let's just start with a status report before that, right? We have traditionally terribly underfunded agencies and efforts and programs before we even doged them, okay? It wasn't like, I mean, Elon Musk and his, what was his lead guy? The guy with a handle of literally big balls, that was his name? Yeah. Like they come in and it's not like they're attacking these overfunded agencies that are swimming in cash. They're already not doing the job. And I think to get to where we are now, you have to understand that the long-term goal, and it has been since the Sagebrush Rebellion and the sort of tax rebellion, is to strangle our federal agencies, our programs, our facilities, to the point that the citizenry no longer believes in them, trusts them, respects them, honors them, and then it's a lot easier to throw a public land sale in a budget bill when you don't have a citizenry that believes in it anymore. And I'm sure we've all heard this. You know, federal government doesn't do crap. They don't cut trails anyway. They don't, like, so it's working in some regards. And I'm sure Land and Monica can talk to the exact, like, where we are today after Doge, but let's start with the fact we weren't funding these programs like we should have, and agencies and people like we should have been to start with.
I can give you some numbers. There are no deputy regional foresters in Region 1. There are 100 open superintendent positions in the Park Service. And, you know, I think that the people who make $16 an hour who were not actually really probationary employees who were terminated and then got hired back, they all didn't come back. So in the cabinet area, 16 people got laid off, 11 people didn't come back. So those are trails that aren't cleared. That's poop that isn't cleaned out. And that's the reality of what these people are doing. They're going out there on horseback, clearing trails early in the season. That means, you know, we'll see what happens in the fire season. Because, you know, those are things, when you don't clean your house, it's okay maybe for a week, 2 weeks. Your husband might not ever notice, but it's not clean, and the consequences, you know, the chickens come home to roost, and they will. So how many federal employees did we have in 1965? Anybody know? Rough numbers? Give me a guess. Anybody? 2.5 million. How many federal employees did we have in January of 2025? 2.5 million. The total number of federal employees in the United States stayed constant. The population almost doubled, and the use of our public lands increased by, you know, a factor of whatever. So we've asked more and more and more of these people who are actually doing the work. I know my brother started working as a seasonal employee in Yellowstone National Park, where we went when we were little kids. I grew up in eastern Montana, and Yellowstone was, you know, where the closest water was. That's not true. We skated on the Musselshell River. So anyway, I think just losing the experience, the management, the boots on the ground, and I heard that over and over and over and over again on my campaign, that things wouldn't be happening up in the Sealy Swan, up in, you know, the Flathead, if we had more boots on the ground. Things wouldn't happen the way, the whole thing with Hands Off Holland Lake, that wouldn't have happened if we had more boots on the ground like we did 20 years ago. So, I mean, that's, the reality is we have gutted the management, the people who actually do the work. And who's here as a federal employee? Anybody? Thank you. Thank you. And those people are burned out, and one thing that we can all do right now is just encourage people to hang in there, because the going's tough right now for those people.
Land?
Yeah, depending on the agency, it's like 15 to 25% right now. And I think that one thing that hasn't been talked about yet is like all the people who took the fork in the road too. They saw it was coming, they saw that their lives were going to be tough, and they decided to retire early. Some of them weren't actually honored in that, by the way. They quit their jobs and then didn't get the actual fork in the road. And so I think, you know, to me, again, it's just like dismantle, defund, divest. And that's the playbook. And so, I mean, the Lincoln, I stopped by there on my way back. And they had, out of 13 people in that office, they have 6 left. I said, well, what does that mean? They said, well, usually we used to go out with our team, kind of especially in the spring, and start just identifying places where there was off-road vehicle use happening that was illegal. Now they don't have the people even just like count that, right? We not only like to enforce it and give them some tickets, which they deserve because they're doing something illegally, but they don't even have like, they don't even be able to keep track of it anymore. So if you've been up in Lincoln, it's a pretty scarred landscape because of all the off-road, illegal off-road activity that's happened up there. So it's just like these examples. I think I see Ben in the back room, but like as a bird biologist, but waterfowl counts it's going to be tough to do waterfowl counts this next year. They've shut off all the funding for the cooperative research units and the prairie pothole region in particular, so North Dakota in particular. And so these consequences are like Army Corps of Engineers. Army Corps of Engineers manages lakes and reservoirs all over this country. And when they opened up in spring, a lot of those places are shut down. And so there's this that's just like the start of this chaos that's going to happen this summer, not to mention what's going to happen with fire. Like a lot of these people that got fired or let go all carried red cards, which means they might not have been on the front lines fighting fires, but they were helping with logistics. And now there's nobody to be able to do that. Like these people that are used to like run teams and actually be on the front lines again. And so you just don't have the people, and so the chaos is going to happen. And so numbers, I mean, 15 to 25%, and it could get worse.
One thing I'd like to ask of everybody here that I think is really important for messaging, and if we're gonna have anything to pick up after hopefully we win some elections in 2026, but if we're gonna have anything left to pick up, it's important that citizens know what's happening and why it's happening. So, as Land says, really bad impacts are starting to hit people where they live, and it's gonna accelerate. And so what I ask from you is remind people, yep, this is what's gonna happen, it's going to get worse, this is why it happened. Like, don't try to make up excuses after the horribleness comes, after the park shuts down for 2 days, or after the facilities aren't open, or after the trails aren't open, or after the permits can't be let, or. Tell them now. Start predicting now that this is coming, because it is coming. There's some really bad impacts coming.
Yeah, good points. And also love your federal bureaucrats. I mean, they get a bad rap, but one of my best friends is one of the lead civil servants at the General Services Administration. And he's staying in there. He could retire now with a cush pension, but he is staying there, protecting his employees as best he can from wave after wave of assaults, first with Doge, and now with other things too, because everybody thinks, oh, well, Elon's gone, so Doge is gone. But no, he's left all these people behind to keep infiltrating systems, to keep doing damage. So
luckily, I saw Big Balls did leave the federal government yesterday.
Too. I did. I never thought I'd see that in a headline, but
oh, great.
What's that?
Big Balls, he took a special appointment in the Social Security Department. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay.
Who needs Social Security?
All right, I shouldn't laugh, but oh my God. Okay, so let's, so Doge, but we want to move on to HB1 because we do want to talk about that. That's in play right now, as Pam said. So this had many provisions when it came out of the House. So now it's in the Senate, but anyways, could you guys give us a quick rundown on what was in this big bad bill coming out of the House before it began to hit the Senate parliamentarian?
I want to talk about a couple things other than sale, because I'm a little worried that we focus on sale, you know, like a bull in a bullfight, this big flag, and then there's other stuff going on. In addition to sale, which I'll let these guys talk about, there was a provision in the bill to allow the largest corporations in the world to buy themselves out of NEPA review, the National Environmental Policy Act review. So like when a huge industrial project happens in the sage grouse or the sagebrush steppe or in the Cabinet Mountains or anywhere else, we have to go through a NEPA review because that's a law that us citizens have demanded. In the bill demanded by the Republicans is a provision that if the largest corporations in the world just pay 125% of the normal cost of that NEPA review, they can buy themselves out of that and it cannot be challenged at all. The citizens cannot protest it. You cannot file lawsuits. Once the permit is let, that's it. So cutthroat, sage grouse, mule deer, all clean water, all be damned. That's the kind of stuff that is in that bill. It opens up every eligible acre in the United States under federal management to oil and gas drilling. Every single eligible acre. Every one. And I could go on and on and on. There's voluminous stuff in there. But that's the kind of stuff that's in the bill that impacts our public lands in addition to the sale.
You want? Yeah. All right. So just a little bit of like civics. So you got HR 1. That's the bill that's in the House that actually did get passed. As we all know, I think if you're paying attention, public land sale off got stopped there because of the backlash. That was only 500,000 acres. Only. That was based in Nevada and in Utah. Malloy and Amadei. Malloy is from Utah and Amadei is from Nevada. Put that provision in there. Ultimately, that was stripped. A couple of things in addition to what Ryan talked about is there's a place called the Boundary Waters in northern Minnesota, which is the #1 visited wilderness in this country. I've been there 3 times. It's absolutely amazing. You can drink water right out of these lakes. There's a copper sulfide mine proposed a quarter-mile south of that, and all that water flows north because of where it is in the landscape. It goes up to the Hudson Bay. And so they're basically fast-tracking a mine. It's not even an American mine. It's based in Chile. The owners are based in Chile. To sacrifice that mine. You also have the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. That's been a political football. It's been passed back and forth between all sorts of administrations, but that's on the chopping block. You have Ambler Road, which is through the Brooks Range up in Alaska. They added all these things, and so that, the public lands piece got taken out. Then they, in their good wisdom, they knew that the boundary waters was really important, so they took that out after the fact, after they voted it. It was like a manager's amendment, which gets really nerdy. But then what's going on in the Senate is absolutely a brand new bill. It's a brand new bill, but they want to try to reconcile them, right? They want to bring them together, and so they have a conference committee. And so there was a meeting that was happening between Senator Thune, who's the majority leader, and then Congressman Johnson, Speaker Johnson, this week. And Johnson was like, give me something that looks exactly like the House, and Thune told him to go pound sand, which is a good thing. But you have this Senate conversation happening now, and so that Senate conversation is where Mike Lee put that forward. That was 3.3 million acres originally of what was going to be potentially sold off of our public land.
Up to 258 million.
There was 258 million that was eligible, but they were going to sell, 0.5% to 0.25%, I think. And so he got some pushback from that, from the people for sure, but then there's this parliamentarian and says, is that germane to this actually piece of legislation? And they said no, so he went back and rewrote it, and it went down to, he took out Forest Service, and that got to be 1.2 million acres that was still, they were going to sell. This week, he's gone back twice, and the parliamentarian each time has said no. And so that's where we're hanging in the balance right now on that actual provision. I think that boundary waters will stay out of that provision. I think the Arctic will stay in. And I think the reason they're picking these special places like the Arctic and the national and the boundary waters is because if you can do it there, you can do it anywhere. If you can take away, especially the boundary waters, which is, it's like 1.1 million acres, most visited wilderness. If you can do it there, you can do it anywhere. And so that is kind of where this bill is right now. They're really ambitious and wanting to do it by July 4th. That said, I was pretty surprised how fast they did it in the House, right? And there's a lot of pressure here from the president in particular. We're getting word that the president really, really wants the sale of public lands to stay in. Which in some ways is scary. I think we're gonna keep that provision out, to be totally honest.
Be careful. Don't fall for this. This is Mike Lee's bill. This is a Republican-led, White House-pushed legislation, and I hope there's this famous LBJ quote, and I think what's going on now is a little bit of this thing that happened to LBJ, and he loved to say about legislation. I'll do my best Texas accent here, but. When you pass a bill, or when you get a bill, you don't leave it out on the porch like a dead cat because it stinks and it stinks and it stinks, right? So the longer this thing lays out there, it's stinking and it's stinking. And so the Medicaid thing is stinking.
Didn't Steve Daines write it?
So it's I'll let Land address this because it's a bit of murky. Montana was accepted from the sale, which makes you think there was an ugly deal cut. Which I'm pretty sure there was an ugly deal cut. I'll let Land comment on his best guesses about how that was cut.
As this comes out of the House and then Mike Lee announces, I'm going to put it back in, Senator Daines, he's walking along, and a reporter's like, so are you talking to Mike Lee? Because you sit right next to him in that committee. You're like the second in charge in that natural resources
Steve
committee.
Daines voted for Mike Lee to be head of that committee. So this idea, like, Mike Lee came out of nowhere. Dude, you voted for him. You put him at the head of the committee.
So at that point, he said he's negotiating with Mike Lee. There's no negotiation here. A quarter acre for the sell, to sell off for tax breaks for billionaires is not a place to do it, right? So he said he's negotiating, so he got a little blowback here in Montana.
But did he write the
Well,
initial?
then all of a sudden it comes out in 11 western states, this is where the sale is going to happen. You've probably seen the maps. In Montana, there's nothing there. Well, our elk don't understand borders. I recreate in plenty other places besides Montana, though Montana's the best. And then I think about if you can do it over in Idaho, you can do it in Wyoming, you can do it in Colorado, you can do it anywhere else. That just opens the door later for here in Montana.
And what about a floor amendment?
What's that?
What if there's a floor amendment?
Well, there could be a floor amendment. I want to vote on this one so bad. Like, I'm kind of not happy with the parliamentarian right now. Because I want an amendment to be brought forward by Senator Heinrich or somebody else that makes them all vote and out in the open on what they think about this. But again, back to Ryan's point, I think the sale of is just like this distraction a little bit right now. I think Mike Lee is trying to win hearts and minds, which he's absolutely doing. He's absolutely doing. More people are talking about this in a positive way than they ever have. But now you're seeing more people come out of the woodwork than you ever have too, which I think is a positive thing.
I want to tell you guys just one little story, and Land and I know who this is, but I'm going to use one person as an example of something that's happening. There's this guy that Land and I know. I was in the firearms industry for a long time, and we've worked together. This guy named Cameron Haynes, okay? And this guy is like a prototypical MAGA influencer. He lifts weights, he loves to flex for the camera, he's got tattoos everywhere, he's a bow hunter, he loves to shoot stuff and put all his gory pictures on internet, and he's a huge hunting influencer, bow hunting influencer, everything big in MAGA politics. He's an Oregon guy. He's got 1.7 million Instagram followers. One of his best friends is Donald Trump Jr. He campaigned for Trump many times on the stage in battleground states, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, these places. So he's on stage with Ted Nugent, Donald Trump Jr., Donald Trump himself. Just last week he was back. He's posting these pictures of him and Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard. This guy is a big-time MAGA influencer. Over the last 10 days, you go look at his Instagram feed, honestly, other than the fact that he's a trail runner and got lots of tattoos, which Len and I don't have, the language on there is like Len and I talking. And he's saying things like, not one more acre. You guys will lose elections on this. You don't understand what's going on. You don't understand our lifestyle. Don't do this. Honestly. What's that? He said, I didn't vote for this. Well, he did vote for it, but my point is this has energized people on the right in a way that is unbelievable. And they have painted themselves into a corner, a good one, I think, with this not one more acre or not 1 acre, not a single acre, right? Because this is coming back probably in a month or two, and it's going to be more than an acre. And look, it's scary, it's frightening. I knew when this started, I'm like, this could go one of two ways, either complete disaster for our country, but I can see a sort of knife's edge outcome where we rally the troops and something really good comes of this. I can see it. I can see the light. I still feel like it's tenuous, but there's some good stuff happening.
Do you think that'll carry over too with this kind of movement that you're seeing, like Cameron?
It's gone further than I thought it would. I don't
Carry
know.
over to what?
Well, just keep going. First of all, we get through this debacle and hopefully, keep these provisions the least worst possible, right? And then what?
I think it's about all of us holding them accountable. I think we are seeing right now, they're being forced. It's almost like right now within the sportsman's community, in particular, hunting and angling community, that you either on one side or the other of this, and there is no other side. And so there's a lot of performative things that are happening right now, which I love, because they're all doing it in public. And so now when we get these provisions taken out, what are you going to do about the NEPA stuff? What are you going to do about the boundary waters? What are you going to do about the Arctic and these other places that you're defiling, that you're selling out, you might not be selling? And then when you have the Secretary of Interior, Doug Burgum, was talking about, again, selling these public lands, use them as a balance sheet. Are they going to step up there? Because that's just one place removed from Trump. So I love it because you're going to be able to hold them accountable, but it's up to all of us to hold them accountable.
The thing that scared these people, the thing that made them pull the public land proposal was pure and simple. political impacts. They feared losing seats in 26 and 28 over this. It wasn't because they're like, oh gosh, we should do the right thing because that's what we do as senators. That's not why they're doing this, right? They don't do that anymore. They're doing it because some of their staff, their pollsters are like, yeah, Senator, have you seen the polls? Because they look shitty back home. That's why they're doing it. And so you're asking, will it carry over? Will Cameron Haynes come out and vote for a Democrat next year? I don't know, but he's got 1.7 million followers, and I promise you some of them will.
Yeah. Monica, you want to add anything else on this round? I have one more question, and then we're going to go to the audience. You good? Okay. All right. Well, we've got a few more weeks, right, on this bill. We have been, trying through all these different groups, Missoula Resists, Indivisible, to try and get any attention from Daines, Sheehy, all these guys. And they are hiding, Zinke did his little VFW thing down in the Bitterroot with 10 people, down there. Don't do any public meetings whatsoever. Trying to get through to these guys is impossible. What advice do you have for people here or in general to try and influence any of their opinions on this bill going forward?
If you have Republican friends or family, have them call if they believe in public lands. Don't just call and say, oh gosh, I like public lands. Have them call and say, and mean it, if you do this stuff, I will never vote for you again. Click. That's it. That's what they understand. Stop with the nuance of, hey sir, please, could you do the right thing? I'm telling you, that doesn't happen anymore. You have to bring it down. Strip it to the studs just like they have.
Anything else?
I got. All right. So I don't want to discourage anybody right now, but I'm going to kind of tell you the way when you talk to chiefs of staff, emails don't really mean anything. They all kind of count them as one, right? They know they're being generated because they're all like a form letter. If you write a personal email, maybe that starts to get through, but emails don't matter that much. Phone calls are the next kind of level above that, but they're not much because they're getting flooded right now. And all they're doing is like they're keeping score. There's a staff in there keeping score, but they're not really listening to that, and that's a one-way street, right? Intercepts would be the best if they were doing things publicly and you could ask these questions publicly. You can get them answering these things publicly. I mean, you could probably hang out at the Bozeman Airport and catch Daines at some point. But
The private terminal.
But what they can't hide from is social media. And so we're hearing from chiefs of staff, it's like this, it's like we don't know what to do with it, because if they start deleting comments that they don't like, that are disapproval, then they're censoring now, right? And so they're not going to do that unless you're being rude, which, I can understand why you're being rude, but you should be polite. But go on social media, I think, and go on their pages and talk to them there, because then it's an open forum. So everybody can see it. And so when you've got some, let's say Daines has some post about opening up, some business here in Montana, but all the comments are about keeping public lands in public hands. His staff is definitely looking at that, and anybody that follows Mr. Daines is looking at that as well.
And I will tell you, Daines' office, Land can't say this because he has to be polite and work with them. It's a very fragile Senate office. Daines is a fragile guy. They do not like bad things said about them at all. They really don't like it. And so I'm telling you, you can get their attention. And they have never seen anything like what is being generated in social media right now in opposition to Republican policies. Daines has never lived in an environment in his entire Senate career where something like this has happened. It's never happened to him. They've had it pretty easy. It's not easy now.
Monica?
Tell your stories too, right? That's what social media is awesome about, is you can tell your stories. You can go out in the woods, be like, this is why I care about it, and then your friends are going to see that. Because that's the way social media works. It's social, right? Like your friends are going to see it. It gives them opportunities to say stuff. And then, I would say the old retail politics works too. When you're talking to your dentist, right, about what you're going to do this summer, and tell them about what you're going to do and that you're really worried about the public lands that you care about. Talk to the local grocer about it. Talk to anybody that really will listen, because the more people that we have speaking up, the better.
I'll add maybe a little bit of a different angle here. My call to action really has been to keep it local. So get on the board of whatever. Get on the airport authority board. There's a ton of open boards. There are volunteer positions, the irrigation district. Who knew, right? So many boards. But then you have a title. And then you can write in your official capacity as a member of the irrigation board, and that matters. And I think also holding every elected Republican in Montana accountable, because Daines and Zinke and Sheehy and Downing and Gianforte are not picking up the phone for us. But you know who they will pick up the phone for are those Republican county commissioners, those Republican legislators. And those people we can talk to, and we can tell them, we know, I talked to the Republican county commissioner in Sanders County, and I said, your hospital's gonna close. This bill passes, your hospital's closing. He said, I don't want that. They saved my life. And I said, you voted for it. I said, you voted for Zinke. And he said, well, I'm not really a Republican, I'm more libertarian. I said, I'm not playing that game with you. I'm not. And that's, so I think really having those direct conversations with the people, the elected people that and you can find, and you can have that face-to-face conversation with and say, I'm gonna tell people not to vote for you. You get Zinke here. I went down to Ravalli County and told those commissioners, bring Zinke down here. I mean, they did not like being in the hot seat down there when they had a public forum at the county commission down there. They did not like that. But I said, you guys, you could bring Zinke in. You don't want to take this, bring him in. He takes your calls. So that's what I think we need to do. We need to make this personal. We need to make it local. We need to make it direct. And we all need to be starting from the ground up in terms of rebuilding, from we the people getting on every board, every city council, every school board, every district, whatever. There's all kinds of things you can be doing. And we all have to do that. Everybody. We all have to do it now.
I just want to offer one thing. First off, look, it's Montana, almost July. There's 8 billion things you could be doing, and here you are. You're motivated, right? Sarah and I live in Kalispell. 2 protests up there. One 1,500, one 2,000 people or more. And I know all you Missouliites are like, no, there's not 2,000 people in Kalispell, but they're there. And the reason this is happening, I'm telling you, the winds have changed from November when Monica and I both had to look at returns we didn't like. They have changed. Why? Because the impacts are real and people are scared, okay? And I know you may not like to use fear in your politics, but nothing motivates people like real potential fearful outcomes. We've seen it in the outdoor community. These people rose up. Cameron Haynes did not want to criticize a bunch of Republicans. Trust me, he did it because he was scared that public land he loves is going away. People are scared about their hospitals going away. They should be. People are worried about health care being gone. They should be. People are worried about SNAP benefits disappearing. They should be. So you now have an advantage in your advocacy that you did not have 5 or 6 months ago. The people that you talked to 4 or 5 or 6 months ago that gave you the cold shoulder, like, screw it, I'm not voting for Monica anyway, those people, a certain percentage of them are now increasingly fearful. Go back to them. Talk to them. Remind them about this. This public lands deal is a real deal. It's not a made-up, angry thing that Trump just pops off about in whatever tweet or truth or whatever he has. Like, now it's real. Now it's hitting people. Firing staff is real.
It's been real liberating not being a candidate, because I can say things like to these county commissioners, I can say, you want us to all have poop in our meat, and I want clean water. And he's like, well, I don't want us to have poop in our meat. And I said, yeah, you do. That's what you're voting for. We can keep it simple.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Monica, for that. And remember, this is all...
I'm anti-poop in meat, by the way.
Yeah, okay. Whew. All right.
That's our platform. We're for clean water and, clean meat, right? And no measles. I'm anti-measles.
As I said, I started in the 80s with Ronald Reagan as president. And we have our whole collective of friends who started then, in Congress, staff members, others. And we kept saying, how low can it go? And so thank you for being against poop and meat. The bravery. But that's what we're talking about. And also...
Nothing like stepping over a low bar, man.
Yeah, I know. We're talking about this is going to happen the next week to month. So it is actually going to happen, and it's not only all these provisions, public lands, Medicaid, Medicare, that they're putting on the block. It's also locking in those tax cuts for another 8, 10, how many years? So it's just going to hamstring this country in so many ways. So we're going to shift it over, though. Thank you very much for all the information and opinion. And we're going to shift it over to you all for any questions you might have. I know this couple right here, was it Courtney? Right here. We talked right at the start. He had a question about Montana and our reps.
Well,
And could you identify, if you're okay with it, identify yourself, just name and...
I'm Kurt Johnson, resident here in Missoula. My question is we'd received a mailer in the mail from Zinke's office saying that he exempted 450,000 acres of public land from this bill, but yet in the way that this whole process works out in reconciliation, the House bill has to be the same as what the Senate puts through, and it's the parliamentarian who actually stopped this, not Zinke. The parliamentarians put a stop to this. So my question is since Sheehy is a co-sponsor of the sale of public lands, Zinke's obviously lying to constituents here. Both of them fall under the Montana ability to be able to be recalled. And I think that would be a much stronger message, is if we actually started a recall of these two, because they've been in office for more than 2 months. Both Zinke and Sheehy are former military, which means that they swore an oath to uphold the Constitution of this country. They re-swore that oath as our congressional members in representation, but they're not backing that up. They're allowing all sorts of different things. We have an executive order right now that the Supreme Court just said that it's fine that Donald Trump's allowing his attack on the 14th Amendment. That is a congressional item that is a 2/3 vote and ratification through state's convention. That right there is an impeachable offense. We should be recalling these two because they don't meet the 2-year in-office portion and they've been in for longer than 2 months. I think that would send a stronger message.
So I don't know if we're going to recall him. I mean, just to be honest. I mean, I think that they're probably stuck there and might not be a bad talking point. I think just go back to process that Zinke did work with the coalition to take it out of the House version before it actually got passed. But
The sale only.
the sale only.
He actually was in favor of the boundary waters thing. He's in
Yep.
favor of this NEPA thing.
Right.
He's in favor of the oil and gas and the coal. But
Right.
yeah.
And so I think, for me, I've seen that flyer that you're talking about, and that's just campaign. That's campaign stuff for right now, but also in the future. But I think that's like celebrating the waiter that plucks the hair out of the soup. It shouldn't have never been there in the first place, right? Should never been there in the first place. And so we're celebrating them, and I think that we'll see what happens. So now the Senate has to pass their version, then they go back to the House, and it's called reconciliation after that, or it's conference after that, and they have to come together. And the House has to vote for the Senate version, basically, is the way it works.
They got to match them up.
And so there's still opportunity to do this. But I mean, Zinke deserves some credit for that. But I think, in Ryan's point, don't look over here because I did this and I'm defiling the rest of our public lands while saying that I'm going to be, I'm going to stand on my San Juan Hill, which is a quote in that flyer, that I'm not going to sell public lands. Well, you're going to defile them at the same time. So what is it?
I will say this: were it not for sale in that House bill, the rest of the bill was, as the Wilderness Society said, the worst piece of environmental legislation in the nation's history, bar none. And Zinke was supportive of all of it.
Yeah.
I'm Don Gisselbeck. Missing from the discussion is of motives is that, as Bertrand Russell pointed out, the rich have always found it very shocking that the poor should enjoy leisure. That, I like to rephrase that as, why should the poor get to enjoy public lands? They're supposed to be working. The other problem we've got is that there's a good quarter of Americans who would rather slit their own throats than live in peace and prosperity with people they despise.
I think this is a broader, so it's partly about lifestyle. It's largely about economic opportunity, because they're selling this because they act like they're going to put affordable housing apartments in a few places. You look at these maps, like this is trophy home territory, folks. This is like Yellowstone Club type stuff going to happen. This is not to benefit working people. And what about loggers and ranchers and miners and outdoor store owners and fishing guides and rafters and all these people who do make a living from our public lands, right? It's bigger than part of it is just working people being able to recreate. Like come on, we all live in a place where we can take a $10,000 vacation tomorrow, right? You can be on the Bitterroot tomorrow, tonight yet. It's amazing. But it's broader than that, and it's an economic system that supports an entire region.
I think that what you're saying too is the restorative and really, you know, the benefit of living in these public spaces. I mean, I grew up with a big family in eastern Montana wearing hand-me-downs, and I thought I lived in paradise. And I did. And I think that so many of us here in Montana, and going back to that initial comment, to me, the land is what really connects us and restores us and brings us together. So let's see the opportunity here.
The guy's a role model too, Don, there, because he skis every month. How many months is it now, Don? 36. Yeah, every month here in Montana. Thank you. Okay, other questions?
Yeah, my name is Mary Price, and I just want to note that ecology and economy, they have the same Latin root word meaning home. There's a big, strong connection there. But my question is, can somebody talk about the roadless rule that we're hearing about? I'd like to know what that means and how that affects.
Okay, yesterday, 2 days ago, first off, 24 years ago, after a long and arduous negotiation and public policy fight, the United States decided to protect 58 million acres of our last pristine forest with what is commonly referred to as the roadless rule. It's a federal management rule that prohibits roaded development in these places. And some of them, many of these places are in Montana. A lot of them you guys have hiked in and biked in and probably skied in a couple hundred days. But there are also places like the salmon forest in southeast Alaska, the last remaining pristine old growth salmon forest in the world. And they figured out a way to roll back the roadless rule. I haven't researched enough to know if we're going to find crafty attorneys to throw wrenches in this, but it rolls back the protections for 58 million acres in the United States. And that's outside this budget bill. So kind of like, as you think about fighting this, I hear you talk about it's going to happen in the next couple weeks. Like, this shit is not stopping. This is something outside the budget bill. These are policy disasters that are going to keep coming at us, and Bergen's going to keep coming at us with another 500,000 acre sale outside the budget process. So this fight is on for all 4 years.
Well, not directly on the point of the roadless rule, but I would like to just touch on the fact that what is being overlooked in this whole process too is the on-the-ground, hard compromise work that has been done and like multi-purpose use agreements up in the Sealy Swan, the Blackfoot Clearwater Stewardship. What is it called? What's the title of that? I always get it wrong. Yeah, but those were really hard, negotiated, compromise things that started on the ground and aren't getting anywhere with this delegation. And the people who came to the table and worked those multi-use agreements out were not, they weren't all from one side of the aisle. And so I think those things are getting missed. Those opportunities are not moving forward. And so that's a place for us to move to, is to gather those coalitions.
Thank you. My name is David Daniels. I did have a letter to the editor in the Current this past week on the roadless stuff, but I want to thank all of you. I want to thank you all for being active and running for office and putting it out there, because we need that. We need events like this one too. We need events to come together at this time people are desperate to have events or something to bring us together over what's going on in this world right now. One quick kind of tangent I've been wanting to ask someone. A couple months ago, the Montana Free Press reported on a $100 million slush fund that Gianforte had control over based on interest that was for funds that were going to be sent to Montana. And I'm just wondering if the Democrats have there's any way to kind of claw that away from Gianforte. And then I just wanted to comment, when I came in, there was mention of Gary Hart, and I haven't heard that name in a long time, but in 1983, I was at an anti-MX missile in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and Gary Hart was talking, but let me tell you, nobody was paying attention. And a little bit later, there was a man started to talk, and the whole area went silent. That was John Trudell, Native American activist, artist, but he was speaking from the heart, which is really where this needs to come from. And, you know, my frustration is, as a Democrat, is how do we really get a message from the heart? And on that note, the issue on Palestine potentially is going to tear apart the Democratic Party. And it has to be confronted. It has to be confronted. We have to speak on that somehow. And yes, this land stuff, it's a juicy issue for Montanans to get some traction. It's a great issue. I love it. But some of these issues, Palestine, we have to confront this as human beings. We have to confront our humanity, and as a party, we have to take a stand.
Okay, thanks for a comment. Do you guys want to talk about any of that, or let that stand? Okay.
Hello, my name, is this on? Okay. Hi, my name is Tricia. I'm a Missoula resident. I am a combat wounded veteran, and I am pissed that the land that is so cathartic to me and all my brothers and sisters for our healing is under threat. And I will say I have some hope because a lot of veterans are speaking out. And that brings me to the point, Monica, in the beginning you said that the land issue may be the only thing that bridges that divide. And I think it's something someone needs to start really capitalizing on. I was a counterterrorism, counterinsurgent expert for more than 20 years, and I understand that the most seminal piece for an insurgency to grow is to craft that narrative that resonates, that is plausible, that, I mean, it is so powerful that it can convince people to become suicide bombers, right? And I'm not seeing within the party any sort of capitalizing on this, on that narrative, and it is so powerful right now. And I guess, what are your thoughts on how do we get there? How do we take this energy and truly bring people together and craft that narrative in a way that's not, oh, you're just being scared or you're being a negative Nancy. No, this is reality. We need people who can actually craft that narrative. So curious on your thoughts of how we...
Sounds like we need to get you in front of more people. And I just want to say thank you for your service. And if you want to read one of the most eloquent, emotional, touching tributes weaving service and trauma, service to our country and trauma together with the need for public lands, I encourage you to read Doug Peacock's Walking It Off. Peacock served as the example for Hey Duke in Edward Abbey's Monkey Wrench Gang. He was a good friend of Ed Abbey's, but after he came back from Vietnam, he very clearly says in this book, Walking It Off, and it's an amazing book, but public land saved him. after his trauma in service and in war. And I think that's the power of our public lands, right? And so if it can do something as powerful as heal our service members, it's a pretty powerful thing. Also run for office.
I mean, I think you got to demand it. You asked like what we need to do. You need to demand it from your elected leaders, right? And I think this issue, as you say, is like a great wedge issue, or it's a great defining issue. And the Democratic Party is not doing enough right now to like be shouting from the mountaintops about it. That's plain and simple.
I think this is an opportunity for the West, and for me, you know, really so formed by the land, I think the West really has to be leading. I mean, the reality is we have two parties. So as heartbroken and frankly as bitter as I have been from putting 5 years of my life into a race that, you know, is just, well, I couldn't win because what, I wanted men to compete against women. So, you know, I think we have to push through and pass that, recognize there are two parties. We're in a two-party system. That's a reality of the world we live in. We have to play the cards that we have and say, we're for clean water. We have to make this really simple and be people from the West. They don't have federal lands in the East, right? So this issue is our issue. And I think this is an opportunity for us to start reframing, start saying, you know, this is who we are. This is who we are. We're the party of the people. We want clean water, and we don't want poop in your meat.
I want to say one thing, too. I was really impressed by the campaign of Zoran Mamdani, who just won the Democratic primary for New York City's mayor. And not because I think he would win here in Montana, but to the last two people that were asking questions, commenting, he covered the gamut of issues, but he stayed really focused on the things that people really cared about. He went out in the streets and interviewed people, he talked to them, and he translated that back into his campaign and put it front and center constantly. And I watched that campaign from 1 week after Trump was elected to this week when he won the primary outright. You know, even got Andrew Cuomo, a political animal if there ever was one, to concede right off the top. So not so much on issue, but on technique and ability to put things forward that really matter to people, that people have been screaming about, and that Trump picked up on and also amplified in his two campaigns. So I just think that's really important too. I appreciate what you guys are saying and putting things front and center. So. Okay, what do we got?
I'm Candace, and I'm from Missoula as well. And my question is, I'm going to take it back to the roadless rule, because what I have been told by a few people is, well, it doesn't matter because it's going to cost so much money to get back into this wilderness area. So I'm curious as what your thoughts are on that. Monica, you're smiling.
I don't think, right, 58 million acres, the day the roadless rule ticks off, you're not going to have roads on every acre of it. That's not the way it's worked. That's not the way industrial development's ever worked. There will be targets on some, like the Tongass, the salmon forest in southeast Alaska, which has trees, you know, the bases of which only 2 or 3 would fit in this room. Those will be targeted quite quickly. And then it'll be a slow march. I mean, so those, you know, we shouldn't just act like there's going to be bulldozers rolling on 58 million every acre in Montana. That's not the way it's going to work. But we didn't establish the roadless rule because that, you know, we established it to protect watersheds and wild places that we go in, wilderness study areas, in places that Land and I hunt elk up high early in the season, right? That's why it's protected.
I was just going to weigh in on the process piece of it, because how did this roadless rule get eliminated? Secretary Rollins said, we're not going to have that anymore. Well, how did we get that rule? I mean, how many comments were submitted? Do you have any idea? Yeah, so, and how much time went into it? So I think, you know, what we're really looking at right now is a failure of process. And that is really, you know, I keep saying this, we the people, we need to demand, you have to listen to me. I mean, when you're saying all these, you know, all these regulations are gone, So they can't just eliminate a rule by an announcement. They can't. They'll do it, and then we have to say, no, that's not how it works. And we can litigate it, and that's what we've got.
Okay, we have time for about 2 more questions, and then we're going to wrap. So, Pam?
I just want to follow up on the veteran who spoke so beautifully. I'm a former Missoula smoke jumper, and I just am racking my brains about how I can leverage that credential to speak in some way. Like, I'm now a disabled human. Of course, I care about Medicaid, Medicare. I'm concerned about all the other things in the bill, but it's the public land that I can bawl about, and that just absolutely has my heart, and that I'd be willing to fly to Washington, D.C. or someplace to get an audience where I could speak to somebody. I think you're right, Monica, that it's an East-West thing, and that people in the East just don't, except some of them do, but understand it in that way. But I just don't know. Yes, demand, and I hear the thing about social media, so I'm going to take that to heart and try to do some more there. But I would physically show up somewhere to speak with a gang of women who are smoke jumpers to say, hey, this is all the reasons this matters so much, and when it's gone, it's gone. But I just can't figure out where to leverage that or where I could speak.
Go to the county commissioner meetings in Sanders County. They're once a week. Go to the Lincoln County commissioner meetings. They have them every week. I know it sounds like that's nothing, but thank you, by the way, for everything you've done. And I really hear you in terms of where will I be heard? But I think showing up at these public meetings, because you'll be talking to 3 county commissioners, and there might be 4 other people in the room who are listening. And I really, honestly, I think this just really has to happen on this ground, local level. Those, Steve Daines may take a meeting from Land Twaney. I don't know if he will or not, but they're not listening to us. So I just really think we have to make the people here on the ground listen to us as much as possible, and show up in every space with the people who voted for this and say, you voted for this, you own this. Make them look at you. Say, look me in the eyes. See me for who I am, and you own this. You own the sale of our public lands. It's on you. Look them in the eyes, and make them look you in the eyes. That's where that's where we have impact.
So I think Monica's right oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Lane.
I think Monica's right about talking about that at a local level. I also think a gang of former women smoke jumpers is a rad story to tell.
Yes.
And so when you're talking about going, maybe somewhere, I'd love to talk to you about more what that could look like as far as going out to Washington, D.C., or doing something here in Montana where you could do some kind of press conference about you all, again, that the way that rolled off your tongue, a gang of smoke jumper women, that's a headline right there. And so I think that a joint op-ed too, or something on social media, there's plenty of things I think you could do, but I think it's about stepping up and telling your story about that, which can have impacts at a federal level.
Yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. You showed up here tonight, you want to tell your story, you're pressing, you're pushing. You're trying to figure out how to do this. You want to put a crack in the door. That's the way this is going to work. Everybody here can do something, and tomorrow you can do a little something more. And it may not feel like it's enough, but you keep pushing and push. That's all any of us are doing. We're just pushing, and every little crack we can open up, we push the door open, and we walk into that thing. Just do that.
But it's great that you've made this connection, because, boy, if you can get this partnership could be really something. So thank you for telling your stories, and hopefully you'll make connections and we'll keep this rolling. Okay, we have time for one more. Is that right, Pam? So, okay. Who's got the mic?
I follow people on social media, and they're not like some crank in mom's basement, who suggest that there will not be national elections. I want to hear your take on that.
It's ludicrous. It does feel like it's somebody in a basement. I don't think democracy's broken yet. I think we're feeling a lot of pressure on it. But like the people still run this country, and that's what's happening right now with this public land stuff. Like there would not, these politicians, Daines in particular, would not be like, I am going to do something on public lands unless he was being forced into it. And I got plenty of examples over the time he's been an elected leader where he was only forced into things. And so I think democracy still works. And this idea that we're not going to have national elections, I think is, I don't know. To me, it's ludicrous.
Look, democracy is not broken, but it's bruised. It's bruised really bad. We're going to have elections, but they're going to tinker around the edge. We're going to continue to see gerrymandering. You're going to see voter suppression. It's not that we're not going to have an election, but Republicans have figured out that if there are rules that allow them to tip the scales legally in little ways, they're going to tip every single one of those. So the point is, it ain't going to be easy, right? Nobody's just going to stumble into this thing and fix it. We're going to have to fight for it, every piece of it. And I think that means showing up, doing what you're doing now. If we have this kind of energy, I know I haven't talked about this directly with Monica, but I see 2,000 people marching in Kalispell. I'm like, damn, where was that November 1st, Yeah. So let's keep this going, and let's make sure we don't get to a place where that kind of question is a lot more pertinent. I think a couple elections down the road, it could be a lot more pertinent.
I feel a little bit darker. I think it's Germany 1934, it's Venezuela 2003, and I think everybody has to speak out everywhere, every time, every place, and to say, this is because the executive orders that come out, the fear, the ICE, the arrests, those are real. And let's face it, we all live in a bubble. We do. Those people who are getting picked up those are real people, and it's happening every day. And lawyers, I see law firms who are rolling over. That's scary. Why am I, one person, in a solo law firm representing Susan Weber, the first lawsuit to challenge the tariffs? Why is that? Everybody has to speak out, and people are afraid. And that's what that Charles Koch lawyer said. I said, why aren't you guys filing these lawsuits? They said, people are afraid. And I said, fuck you all. There's nothing I've never backed down from a fight. I'm crazy, but I don't know what I am. But no, this is our time. This is our fight. This is our time. We have to do this.
All right. Hey, listen, thank you so much for coming and for caring and for making this cause your own. I want to thank our panelists. I mean, I so admire you guys, always have, but especially seeing you stay in it, not shrinking away. Thank you. Seriously. Let's hear it for before we go, make a quick connection, and we'll get out of here, but keep fighting. Thank you.
Thanks for doing this.
Hey, man. Thank you.